Hello everyone, this is a video about Derwent XL Graphite Blocks. These come in a tin. You can get 6 different blocks and they come in different colours. The two I'm using here are soft and very soft, which are graphite colour. So I'm starting off using the soft, which gives you, if you use it on the side, as I am here, it gives you a very, very light textured effect on your paper. The paper I'm using is Winsor Newton 220 GSM, so it does have a little bit of texture in it. So you can use these Derwent blocks on the end for a bit more detail, or you can use them on the side and they'll give you that texture. This is the very soft, so you can see the difference in the depth between those two. And you can also use that on the side too as well. And a little bit later on in the video I'm going to show you various different ways you can use them and combine them with pencils and all sorts of other things. Now for this purposes I'm just going to show you what you can use your finger to blur them, to sort of blend it out. If you think you've got a bit too much texture, that will just blend it, which is quite a good technique for certain things. This is one of the other colours in the block, raw umber, and there's a burnt sienna as well, which is a lovely reddy brown, but this one is more natural brown. So if you were going to be doing something like a tree trunk with texture and bark, you could use, here I'm using the soft first of all, just to get the tooth of the paper and get a nice texture on the surface. And then I'm going to use the raw umber on the top, and you should see that you'll get a sort of a natural bark colour. Here you go, so here's the raw umber over the top, and it gives you a lovely pleasant mixture of the grey and the raw umber. Now if you were going to be doing this bark, if I were going to be doing this, I would use pencils to work into it to give it more detail. Here I'm using a stump, a paper stump on the side, just cover a large area. Different ways you can blend it, you can work into it, you can use the stump, put a bit more in, pencil, stump, you can just keep working that until you get the right effect that you want. And you can reintroduce the graphite blocks on the top. And just keep doing that as many times as you need to until you get the right effect. So here I'm using a pencil to work into it. So I'm going in and looking at the natural areas that have been left of the white textured paper showing through, and I'm using the pencil to work round them to enhance the lines that are showing. So this is soft again, just putting a layer down, and I'm using 3B pencil here to go in, just to show you a little bit more. So this is just straight soft XL block with a 3B pencil. And if this was a wooden door and you had lots and lots of vertical lines going down and lots of depth and lots of texture, this is how you could work into it to get that effect. It's quite a neat texture technique, and you just keep working it and working it until you get the effect, until it starts to look like wood. And then you can work back into it again with your XL block. This is the soft. I tend to use, depending on what it is I'm doing, if I want a bit more texture and I just want a subtle effect, I'll use the soft. Whereas if I want to go very, very dark and I want more texture, or I want to get a very dark background, I'll use the XL very soft. This is Tombow Mono pointed tip eraser. So here I'm taking out highlight areas, and this is a Derwent battery operated eraser, which does actually take out a little bit more graphite, so it's quite useful. Can be quite tricky to use sometimes, so you need to make sure that you've got your wrist anchored on the surface so that you've got control. And this is a Maped putty eraser, So you can use that to take out areas. This is just really to show you the different things you can use, just like you do with your pencils, you can still use with the XL graphite blocks. And you just keep working it, keep going in, taking out, going in, until you get the effect that you want. Now this is the basic texture technique if you're just using pencils without XL blocks, for the time being at least. So this would be an HB that you're using on the side. Now if you use, depending on the tooth of the graphite content in the pencil you're using, the more tooth will come up. So you can see on this one now I've got more texture because this is actually a 3B pencil. So if you use that on the side, more of the graphite in the 3B will pick up the tooth of the paper. This in contrast is a much lighter pencil, H grade pencil, and you can see the difference between the two. And you should also be able to hear the difference as well because it's much more scratchy, there's more clay in the pencil. And you can work into this as well, this time using the pencil the traditional way, using it on the point and working into the natural tooth that's come up from the paper that's been left by using the 3B over the top. And that alone will give you quite a good effect. I do that on all sorts of different texture techniques, on rocks, on bark, even on clothing, certain clothing, wool. It's a really useful technique. These are just different things to try out so that you become more used to using them. And I would suggest that if you do start to get your XL blocks and you do get a tin of them, you do a few little swatches like this, so you have a little practice, and then right underneath what you've used and your thoughts on it as you go, because you'll forget otherwise. This is an embossing tool which you use for card making. And I'm making an impression into the paper. You can just about see where that is, the highlight is attracting that indentation, and then you go over the top with your graphite block or indeed your pencil, and you can see where I've made the indentation you have a white line. So if you were doing something along bark, the lines of bark, or rocks or something where you've got craters and lighter areas in it, it's a really neat technique. You can get embossing tools in different sizes as well, so you can get fine ones, you can get medium sized, and you can get really big ones as well. And you can also use a darning needle, something along those lines. Just make sure that it isn't anything that's going to scratch the surface and pull up the surface of the paper, because you don't want that. So the previous XL block I used was the soft, and now you can see I'm using the very soft, which is much darker. The only thing you need to remember with this sgraffito is, obviously, because you're making an indentation into the white paper and you want that to show up, you have to do that first. You can't use your XL block or indeed your pencil and then use the graphite, the sgraffito over the top. Right, now this is using the very soft, and imagine you wanted to do like a dark background. And you wanted to blend it, and you were doing a drawing and you had a very dark area of shadow. If you used the very soft XL block and use your finger to go in and blend, it gives you a lovely smooth even effect without shine, which is something that I know a lot of people are quite keen on when they're using graphite, because the properties of graphite, obviously you do have shine, but with this you don't. So it's a really useful thing to know. This is a Wolf carbon pencil, which is half and half graphite and charcoal. So you have a little bit of control with using the graphite in it, but also the depth of the charcoal. And this is a pure Derwent charcoal pencil. On my charcoal demonstration, we went through some of these things in a little bit more detail, so do have a look at that to get a little bit more information. You can use them, the charcoal, because it is charcoal, it will be darker, and you can use them in combination with the XL block, but you need to use the charcoal first and then use the XL over the top, because otherwise it won't adhere. And here you go, this is the Derwent tin, and these are the colours that you've got inside, so you've got a lovely natural range. And this is a drawing of wood using all of those skills. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.